I'm live.
Oh,
Hey YouTube. Hey Fish Tropic, welcome to the stream, man. How's your weekend going? Sound is good, video is good. Thank you, sir. I never know. I'm dependent on the kindness of strangers. Um, so we're here on the last live stream of this decade. Kind of interesting little tidbit there. Um, I guess I've been doing this for three years now. Uh, Seems like longer, but I guess it's 3 years. Hey, Phil Emerson, welcome to the stream. Um, and it's we're on the cusp of a new decade. We're headed for the Roaring Twenties. I'm we have to know where we've been to know where we're going, and the Roaring Twenties were a interesting time period. Hey, Fish Room Fever, welcome to the stream. You are more than welcome to lurk. I've been the 20s were screwed. Yep, the 20s were the 1920s were the Roaring Twenties, they called them, because people were, hey Dan Slee, people were pretty much out there. They were, I don't know, the mindset of the public was pretty much, and Nisi says, complete with a prohibition and a bank crash. Yep, the Roaring Twenties preceded the Great Depression, and you can kind of feel that kind of thing in the air for this potential Roaring Twenties we're headed into. The Great Gatsby will explain it all. Yeah, yeah, that's kind of true. It's just things run in cycles, and the cycle of the Roaring Twenties in 1920 was that people were taking a little bit of money and turning it into a large amount of capital with nothing to back it up, and then investing that heavily in losing propositions and losing money they didn't have, spending money they didn't have. Nisi says we better learn how to cook depression style and hunt game. I remember my grandfather telling me a depression joke. It it was he met a preacher on a pathway, and he said, "Preacher, better times are coming." And the preacher said to him, "Joe, how do you know better times are coming?" He said, "Well, I just saw a rabbit, and there wasn't anybody chasing it." So, so yeah, like Nisi says, we need to learn how to tighten our belts in a depression. And there's nothing saying that we are definitely headed towards a depression. I'm just noticing what happened in the Roaring Twenties in 1920 and kind of seeing some similarities between those 20s and the 20s we may be headed into just ahead of us in a few days. It always helps to know history and to know how that relates to what you're experiencing. And I think the same thing's true in fish keeping. It it always will benefit you to know the history of a species, how that species is being kept, uh, how that species has been kept. Fishery Fever says, imagine if our currency was still backed by precious metal versus play money. Yeah, promissory notes. We operate on a system of promissory notes. Back in the day, money said silver. Oh, what did it say on it? I used to have some of those. Silver or gold. Uh, certificates. Yeah, where you could literally turn that bill in and expect to be given the same amount value in silver or gold depending on what the note said. Not that many people did that, but there were a lot of financial shenanigans that occurred around those sorts of setups, yeah, bonds, and it, it it's wise to study some of that so you can see what we might be headed for in the oncoming decade, the 2020s. But I thought that was interesting that this is my last live stream of the decade. Hey Joseph, welcome to the stream. We're talking pretty much about nothing again. I have been trying to catch up on one of our Fish Fam's new members, Father Fish. I'm kind of late to the game here. He's been broadcasting now for a couple of months, 3 months maybe, and I had not caught him, but he subscribed to me recently, and so I have spent some time trying to catch up on the stuff that he has on his channel. And it's apparent that he has his own fish store, Father Fish Aquarium, and anytime someone is in the retail business of fish keeping, you can probably learn a great deal from them, from their experience. That's not to say that every fish seller, every fishmonger on the internet is going to have great advice for you, but anyone that is as long in the tooth, as old as Father Fish is, that's been around and is running a retail store, they are going to have some good advice. And so I definitely think that Father Fish is someone to watch. I definitely think that keeping an eye and offering help and Fish Fam welcome to someone like Father Fish is probably a good idea. And Joseph says, Amber and I have keys to a 4-bedroom house in Burlington, Vermont. Wow. That's pretty committed, Joseph. If you've committed to a 4-bedroom house in Burlington, Vermont, that's commitment, my brother. And Nisi's saying his and her fish room is definitely Hashtag couple goals. Yeah, that sounds exciting. It sounds like something for the fish fam to keep an eye on, to offer a hearty encouragement to. Fish Tropics says, time to flash sail and bounce. Yee! Hey, Big J's Fish Keeper, welcome to the stream. His and her fish house. That sounds pretty dang cool, Joseph. I'm not sure. I, it's the Burlington, Vermont part that kind of has me concerned. You're going to go from the tropics to the Arctic. But I'm looking forward to seeing how that hashes out, how you guys manage, and I'm highly interested. So, Jamber Fish Farm. It sounds good. I'm hoping there will be a lot of blue tetras come out of your Jamber fish farms. J.H. Ponds. Back to the register I go. Okay, Fish Room Fever. I definitely think, like I was starting my little rant about knowing the history of the 1920s, so we can kind of see some parallels to the 2020s that are coming up. And Nisi aptly pointed out the 30s were the beginning of a depression, and the decade of the 1920s were kind of the setup piece for the Great Depression, as it's called. I think that it behooves us as fish keepers to recognize the history of Joseph says Vermont is temporary, Florida is the end goal. Fish farm in southern Florida. Yeah, that could work. Well, Joseph, Father Fish seems to be in southwest Florida, so you might strike up a friendship with him and get some good ideas about local stuff that you could get. Local land. Hey Pam, welcome to the stream. I think that history is a good way to gain understanding of how fish have been kept, how modernization in our hobby has gone through cycles, but yet slowly progressed forward until we've reached the place where we are now. Be interesting if there was someone alive from the 20s. Well, I'm sure there are people that are alive from the 20s. People are living longer and longer and longer, so I'm sure there are some people that came from the 20s. I know there's plenty of us around from the 40s and the 50s, so but it is, oh, Pam snowed in. I don't find that shocking, Pam. Did you ever get your truck running, Pam? Hey, Mr. Bees. fish and things. And thank you for sharing out on FishTuber's notifications. Anyway, I'm just, thinking about the history. No, I wanted to try today. Uh-oh. And now you're snowed in, huh? Buried in snow. Yep, that's pretty much the story of the North. Joseph says it's been nice watching Dan, Chris, and Bob building out new fish rooms. Nice to have others to learn from and bounce ideas. Yeah, yeah, that is true. It it it's wonderful to have a bunch of people that are doing the same thing you're doing or trying to do the same thing, and watch how they go through the process so that you can learn by their mistakes and not make similar mistakes. And Fish Tropic is notifying you that the best fish rooms have auto water changes. And that is true, but there are also downsides to auto water changes. There are potential issues that can come about through automatic water changes if your auto water change system has a central return for water where that water is then treated and sent back out again. You can have issues with diseases, pros and cons, that's true. You can have diseases that spread through your entire system if you reuse water. Joseph says the goal is healthy, genetically clean fish, U.S. bred and raised stock. Yep. Can't go wrong with those goals in mind. Hey, Joel JZ. Welcome to the stream. We're talking about history today because this is my last live stream for this decade, heading into a new decade of fish keeping and fish fam. Fish Tropic says I would use bins to collect rainwater. Not sure where Amber is, Joseph. That's your job to keep track of Amber. Rainwater collection also is fraught with its own issues, pros and cons. There are some places that now have laws against rainwater collection. They don't want you, the farmers in the local area do not want you to be collecting their rainwater. They see it as their right to have that water be on the ground, nourishing the ground with water, so they don't want you collecting it. It seems kind of back-asswards to think that way, but you can kind of see their point. If water is something that's going to become more and more and more critical as time goes by, as we poison and pollute more and more of our natural water, it's going to become more and more critical. How we do things like collect rainwater, it's becoming more and more critical for wild fish to get water in certain areas. We're messing with the climate. We're heating up the planet. And by doing so, we're changing rainfall patterns in a lot of places. Um, you can say that it is a natural um, greenhouse effect that's going on. Fish Tropic says water has been toast for years. People should actually be trained how to treat water to survive. Yeah. Uh, Nisi was talking about learning how to cook for depression, learning how to conserve water for survival in the future may become even more of an issue. But it's seriously been an issue for fish in their native habitat for years because of the pollution. I say years, decades. Um, it's becoming more and more increasingly critical for fish in the wild as populations grow, as progress brings roadways and towns and villages into more and more of the remote areas of the world. There's an increase in pollution that goes. Um, Joel's talking about postpartum depression. I use that term highly loosely. Uh, Christmas Christmas is a season that tends to cause a lot of extra stress on a lot of people. I always try to stress um, using and and partaking of this season in as much stress-free ways as possible. Nisi's telling Joel she has a spare room, extra food, and a tank or two to nerd out on. uh, I I'm trying desperately here. Joseph is saying quarantine will be its own room in the house. That's uh, that's an interesting way of handling it. Uh, a lot of pathogens and diseases can well be airborne. There are lots of cases and lots of scientific information that shows just how airborne uh, pathogens can be. Uh, even a lot of diseases can literally rise into the air column on water vapor and move from tank to tank. Even if you're very careful about your um, siphon hoses and siphon tubes and clean them religiously, you can literally spread um, diseases and pathogens, um, bacteria through the water vapor in your air column in your fish room to get around. So by putting a quarantine in a room by itself, it will further enable you to separate dangerous, in the sense of the other fish that you keep, pathogens, diseases, bacterias. You can further isolate the fish from siphon hoses like $3, and Fish Tropic says he tosses his every 6 months. Yeah. Well, mostly you can expect that by running. Joseph says they're going to have a full fish laboratory. That's awesome, Joseph. Now you're just making me jealous. A whole house fish setup. That's Lucas's. Lucas just basically has let his fish keeping take over his entire house. And I'm much jealous of that situation. And Joseph is saying between Amber and himself that they have a full lab. So you've got microscopes and Erlenmeyer flasks and Bunsen burners and auger dishes and loops. Joseph says, yeah, we are following in Lucas Brett's footsteps, except his wife is not a breeder too. Don't kid yourself. Mrs. LRB knows a great deal about fish. She has watched Lucas for many years closely, and she knows a great deal about fish in her own right. She is one of the people that gets to take care of the fish house when Lucas is gone on one of his many travels about the country. Yeah, that's my point. I've met the lady, and she is no slouch as far as taking care of fish herself. All right, I've pretty much wasted half of this hour talking about nothing once again. If someone has questions, I kind of hoped Father Fish. Yes, you did miss meeting her, Joseph. I kind of hoped Father Fish would be in this live stream so I could pick his brain a little bit. I'm going to have to catch one of his live streams. He seems to be doing them on Sunday, so I'll try to catch him tomorrow if I can. I was particularly interested with his discussion on substrate. He did a very in-depth look at how substrates work, how plants set up basically a field around their roots, and how they do that in no substrate tanks, i.e. if there's heavy water flow, they can't do it in a no substrate tank or in a situation where they don't have substrate. And in that situation, less water flow is better for the plants. And I think that that's something that we can all learn from. Someone's experience growing plants. You know, a lot of people have the knowledge, but it's kind of difficult sometimes to pass that on. Hey, Big City Betas, welcome to the stream. I hope you all are having a good Christmas season, a holiday season, a nice New Year's, and kind of find some way to celebrate the fact that we're passing into a new decade, and and kind of look around and see how things are changing around you. Kind of pay attention to your uh, surroundings, to what's going on around you. Hey, Valley Fish, welcome to the stream. Nisi's asking me, have you toyed with ponies? Peonies? Ponies? And houseplants, Dwayne? Not pothos, but begonias and such. Well, the question would probably be better asked of my wife because she is the botanist and I am not. I'm not the botanist. I've always had a brown thumb, but I will tell you that most of my tanks and my wife's tanks now have pothos growing out of them, and I am particularly happy with that fact because anytime you've got plants with their roots or in their entirety in the water, they are going to pull a lot of the uh, contaminants, if you call it that your tropical fish need removed from the water, things that are particularly difficult to get out, nitrates, nitrites. Um, and plants will always help that. Siri is trolling you. And Fish Tropics says plants save tanks, and they do. I am a wholehearted believer in that truthiness there. That plants are a great part of the arsenal of fish keepers. People that want to keep fish alive in glass boxes need to know and understand plants, aquatic plants, land plants that can be used in our tanks. Amber can't answer your texts. I'm happy to be a forum that Joseph and Amber can use. I find that particularly wonderful. Uh, Fish Tropics wants me to explain why plants need calcium too. Um, uh, Fish Tropic, I'm not sure that I effectively know exactly why plants need calcium. I'm aware that plants will reduce the amount of calcium in a tank, in the water in a tank, in the substrate of a tank. I'm sure that plants use calcium as building blocks in some way. I'm not sure how plants convert calcium into cellulose, but you may have stumped me with that question because I'm not as up on my aquarium plants as as I probably should be. Like I said, I've always had a brown thumb. I've always had trouble keeping plants alive. Um, I'm really good with moss. I can grow any moss that you care to give me. I think a lot of it is by the choices I make in my the circulation and the way I set my tanks up. I'm much better off with like pothos growing up out of the water with its roots in the tank water than I am keeping plants alive. Um, I mean, I can do guppy grass. I can do wisteria. I can do a lot of them. TM Aquatics did an interesting video about pothos affecting his pleco fry survival rate. Better without. Huh. I've got to admit I did not catch that video. Or if I did catch that video, I didn't catch that part of it. So that's TM is in here a lot, so um, I'm particularly jealous of his pleco breeding, his luck with pleco breeding, and his skill with pleco breeding. And Joseph is saying this slideshow is always a walk down memory lane. Yeah, I still haven't gotten around to coming up with anything better to have as a background, Joseph, than this. As much as I recognize that it's overused and been seen a million times now, I still like it. I still like having that as a background, and partly because of what you're saying, a walk down memory lane. We get to see and relive some of our memories from Peru. Amber is telling Joseph, just you wait until you see just how many plants I have. It's not just pothos. I love all plants. 3 car trips worth. And Fish Tropic is enlightening us by saying calcium plays a very important role in plant growth and nutrition, as well as in cell wall deposition. Now that's an area that I have lots of room to learn about. I'm plants and aquarium plants are an area that I am not as well versed in as I should be. And I know that plants are a very effective way to soften water. If you want to, if you have particularly hard tap water and you have some fish that need softer water, that by adding plants and driftwood, you will immediately soften that water because the plants will pull calcium out of the water, hardness, KH, and the wood will release tannins and oils that also make the water softer. Sharpie's Models and Aquatics, welcome to the stream. So I'm open to all manner of plant knowledge. One of the I've gotten to I've begun to watch 2 channels that are non-fish related a lot here lately. One is Wild Wonderful Off-Grid, and I just love watching that family go through um, building their new home off-grid. And another channel that I have spent a lot of time on, I was just watching it before I started this live stream, is Crime Pays, but Botany Doesn't. Uh, Joey Santori is a hoodlum from Chicago that is deeply versed in botany, and he has been traveling all over the planet, um, giving us his wonderful potty mouth rambling discourse on humanity, and in the same time teaching us about botany and geology and Sharpie says, I love Crime Pays, but Botany doesn't. Educational and hilariously sweary. Yeah, Joey's just like a force of nature. That Chicago twang in his voice just makes the pronouncements that he makes on humanity's state that much more wonderful. And I would recommend anyone. I mean, he cusses a lot. He has a hilariously depressing view of humanity. He's obviously had anger management issues, and he says that botany keeps him less homicidal. But I think that it is a remarkable channel, and that Joey is someone that we should all keep an eye on. If you have young children, he might not be the best. My wife's called him potty mouth. He might not be the best potty mouth for them to listen to, because he does go on swearing streaks. He usually ends all of his videos with go F yourself. And it's just his nature. It's just the way he expresses himself, Chicago style. I think he lives in Southern California now, and his main job is working on the railroad. At least I think, from what I've been able to pick up in his videos. I just really highly recommend Joey's channel. Here, let me put up his latest video.
Pouches, little pouch flower.
I'm not quite done watching it, but I really recommend it. And Sharpie says, you probably enjoy AVE too, Dwayne. More engineering based, but equally funny. Okay, I may have to check that out. But I strongly recommend Joey. He's on the coast of Chile right now. He's been spending a lot of time in the high Andes and along the coastline of Chile. I was hoping that he would head for the Puerto Maldonado region, but it doesn't look like that's what he's going to do. I think he's just going to pretty much stick in Chile right now. And it's remarkable his depth of knowledge. I mean, he's obviously an amateur botanist, but he's an amateur botanist like I'm an amateur fish keeper. He's spent years and years studying it. He he has traveled all over the world looking at plants. Some of the latest stuff he's done is Australia, and like I said, he's in Chile now. He's obviously spent a great deal of time in the Mexican deserts and the tropical zones of Mexico. I just can't stop watching his stuff. So even at my advanced age, I'm trying to learn more about plants. Um, I'm, I think, I think plants are critically important for us as fish keepers. But anyway, I've also been trying to catch up with Father Fish's videos. I think it's always a good idea to at least give people. Nisi says advanced age, my butt. Age is a frame of mind. Well, it's more than a frame of mind, Nisi. It becomes harder. Yes, yes, Pam, I'm younger than you, and I'm still experiencing advanced age. It's harder and harder for me to remember what I had for dinner last night. It's harder and harder for me to sit here on a live stream and remember words that I know I should be using, words that are have always been a part of my arsenal of talking about things, and I go blank. I can't pull the word up out of my memory banks. Joel is saying he feels aged and he's 33. Well, I'm over twice as old as you are, Joel. So, I, I, while I understand Nisi's point that you're as young as you feel, Joel keeps telling me to eat more eggs. Pam's telling him to go change his diaper and hush. Joel has told me that increasing my choline intake can have a significant effect on word retrieval. Yeah, but it can also have a significant effect on my cholesterol too, Joel. So eggs are a mixed blessing. Sharpie says age is life dependent, and I would change that to lifestyle dependent. If you've had a hard life, if you've been rode hard and stabled wet, you feel older at a younger age, and I would agree with that. That a lot of how we feel when we reach a certain age is dependent on how hard we've lived, how well we've kept up with our own health, how well we've balanced our lifestyles. I mean, basically, what I want to eat is ham. Anytime my wife asks me, what do you want to eat? The answer is always ham. But I also recognize that ham is not the greatest thing for my cholesterol and all kinds of stuff. So I'm constantly. Sharpie says his brain's okay, but his body is due for the landfill. Yeah, that's. Except not even my brains are okay anymore. Uh, Advanced age is affecting my ability to learn, to retain information, to give a shit enough to retain information. Precious tranquility. Welcome to the stream. Hey, y'all driving, so I'll be listening. Well, definitely don't pay more attention to me than the road around you. And I got to admit that's a excellent name choice. Precious tranquility. All right, we're winding up towards the top of the hour again. I've tried my best to point some of this live stream towards fish keeping, but it's difficult. It's difficult to keep on topic here. There's so much other stuff going on out there in the world, and it's important that fish keepers pay attention to what's going on in the world around them too. Sharpie says, I'm going to have a fun morning. Got to catch 30 cribs and 30 cherry shrimp for sale. Well, my guess is that the 30 cherry shrimp will go a lot faster than the 30 cribs. Nisi says, just jot everything down and you'll remember better. My other hobby is planners, tracking things. Writing day to day helps the memory. And Nisi, I couldn't agree more. One of the old school methodologies for learning how to use a computer was to keep a notebook handy and teach yourself how to use the computer. Look things up on the internet, but to write down when something works. If you have a problem, you can't get a program to function. Hey, KG Cichlids, welcome to the stream. If you can't get a program to function properly and you keep jerking around trying different things to get it to work, and it finally works, you finally get it to work, write down right then what you did to manage to get that program to work or manage to get the computer to do what you want. And that way you enforce the memory. If you're in a classroom listening to a professor, if you take notes, even if they're basic notes, you will be more likely to remember those points on a test later on when you're asked. The memory will be much stronger if you have written down that stuff. So I definitely agree that writing things down for memory is definitely helpful. Precious Tranquility says, I have a hard time documenting. Keep everything in my head. It gets disorganized sometimes. Yeah. Well, one of the ways that it is helpful to organize what's going on in a fish tank is to write notes down on the outside of the tank. You don't have to write them on the front, but you can write them on the side, someplace where you can keep track of what's going on in a tank. If you're having water quality issues, you can track when you last changed the water and how much water change you did. Hey, VB23, welcome to the stream. All right, guys, we're winding down to the end of the decade as far as this live stream goes. And I wish I could promise you that next decade would be all new stuff with all new people and all new ideas. But sadly, you're going to get the same thing for the next decade out of me. All right, guys. I hope you all have a happy new year. If you do New Year's resolutions, be gentle on yourself. Try not to overdo it. It's better to make small incremental changes than it is to try to do huge, gigantic leaps all at once. So make your New Year's resolutions accordingly so that you don't uh, suffer from constant failure and that you instead have small successes that it will continue to encourage you. And good luck with your fish. Good luck with your fish tanks. Um, treat yourself the way you treat others. All right, guys. Have a good rest of your weekend and have a good, happy, safe New Year's all.